Hi, and welcome to the Good Girl Confessional podcast. Thank you so much for joining me once again. I'm your host, Sandy Lowries, and the Good Girl Confessional podcast is proudly brought to us by WB40, Women Beyond 40, a platform for women 40, 50, 60 and beyond who want to talk about all the stuff others don't want to. You can join us at WB40.com. Before I begin today's podcast, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which this podcast is recorded and where I live and play. And in that case, it's the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations. And I want to pay my genuine respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging. And I want to pay homage to their ancient history of storytelling. Today in the podcast, if you like a wine, and I don't mean a whinge, if you like a glass of wine and you've always wanted to know more about the wine industry, then you are going to love our next guest. I am really excited to have a chat with Kelly Pearson. She is a woman in the wine making industry who is collaborating with other female winemakers, which I think is incredible. She heads up her own business, which is called, I love this so much, Lady Garden Wines. Yes, pun intended, I love. She brings so much energy and passion to the winemaking field. She is fun, energetic. She makes a variety of wine, and I think I'm going to learn quite a lot today. Please welcome to the podcast, Kelly Pearson.
Hey there! When Sandy's not interviewing kick-ass women, she's hanging out with me at Alex the Seal, a podcast about music and nostalgia. I'm Jo Pybus, and each episode, Sandy and I talk about all the songs that got us hooked up, knocked up, and broken up. Do yourself a favour and search Alex the Seal on your podcast app. Love you, Molly!
Hi, Kelly, and welcome to the Good Girl Confessional podcast. How are you today?
I'm fantastic, Sandy. Thanks so much for having me. It's really exciting to be having a chat about wine, the things that I love, wine.
I'm super excited, and I'm only sorry that I didn't do this podcast later in the day, because then we could have both been having a wine.
Well, it is past midday. Sometimes we are on somewhere.
Actually, you're right. Sorry about that. I am so excited to chat with you today because you are the very first female winemaker and producer that I've actually had on the Good Girl Confessional, so that's super exciting.
Oh, that's really great to be the first.
It's always good to be the first.
That's right.
Be gentle. So I think I'm totally in love with everything that you are doing, and especially your passion for what you're doing. So there's so much to cover in this podcast. I guess, number one, we should talk about your business, which is called Lady Garden Wines. And my God, I love that. I love it.
Yeah, thanks. It had a bit of a fun start. So I had a business partnership a while ago, and we had an overarching name for the business and a key brand. And then we wanted to do some fun and, some fun side projects and so forth. And we were at a friend's birthday party, and there was a few wines consumed, etc. And she said, we should call it Lady Garden. I said, oh, that's a bit cheeky. And then she said, no, but we're ladies and it's the grape garden. And I went, yeah, okay, cool. And so the night progressed. We thought that was hysterical. We loved it. And then her partner, or husband at the time, had said to her, oh, look, I'm not sure if I can give you any money. I don't think that's a really good idea for your business and everything. Anyway, the next morning she's rang me and said, Dave's in, it's all good. And I said, I don't know what you wanted to persuade him to. So, yeah, unfortunately, that business relationship folded, and I've taken – I always had in the back of my mind maybe we could go down this track, but when it became mine and I got the IP going forward, I'd always had the idea that I wanted to partner with other women in the industry. Doing things on your own is it's rewarding and so forth, but, I wanted to partner with other people. I wanted to give back. And so that idea has started to change and morph and evolve into what it is now. So that's a wine business, which is all about celebrating women in wine. I've got wines under the Lady Garden label where I make a couple, and then every year I partner with other women winemakers from around Australia. Last year I partnered with Anita Good from Wangalina, Erin Pooley from Little Francis, and Kelly Russell from Bellarine Estate. She looked after my Geelong fruit while I was interstate. This coming year I'm working with Chloe Kelly from Joy John Wines, Grace Douglas from Feathertop, Kim Carr from Dreambird Wines in WA. Very excited to meet her in person next week. I'm heading to WA. And I'm hoping to, and I won't say who yet, but I'm hoping to work with an old university lecturer on Wine for This and another really exciting project that we're thinking about as well. So we're doing that. I'm working with people who have been in the industry for a while, some people who are new, giving them a leg up. I've had, I think I told you, 27 years experience in the industry. It's a long time. Feel like I've been doing it forever. And 19 years winemaking and 27. This is my 26th vintage. So wow. Some years I've done a couple of vintages and so forth. So, yeah, quite overwhelming when you sort of stop and go, that's a lot of stuff that I've done. But that's what I want to do, is I want to get back to partnering and working with interesting people. And this allows me to do that in my Partners with Wine program. So that's sort of where I'm at with Lady Garden at the moment. It's continually, morphing and changing and evolving, which is exciting, because every time I come up with a new idea, I have to put that into the whiteboard, top left-hand corner, think about it later, concentrate on the now.
I love that, though. I love the idea of them. And obviously everything I do on my platform is about women and about women's stories. And I love the idea of, when I meet women whose businesses are all about that, helping other women to kind of rise in whatever industry it is, but partnering with other women, because I'm a big believer that when collaboration happens, magic happens, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one thing to do things on your own and achieve, and that's really awesome, but I thrive with other people. And if you want to go back to talking things about your why, Simon Sinek, we all love him. Well, maybe not everyone, but finding your why. And I worked with someone a little while ago, and essentially my why is bringing people together and telling a story, and my how is wine. And, that's my thing. I want to give back. When I get more established and I've got, I'm making money and doing all right and actually starting to pay myself. I'm hoping to give back into either create a women's-based charity, because I've got a couple that are very close to my heart, or donate to them and make that part of very much the ethos of what Lady Garden's all about.
I love that.
So that's giving to the community, but also giving to the wine community. I'd like to create maybe a textbook scholarship for some university students. Some, internship opportunities, network for job placements at vintage time and that sort of thing. Yeah.
That's so exciting. And I've got to say, coming into this, the reason I love how passionate you are about all of this is because, hand on heart, I love wine, and everybody knows I like to drink it. I do drink a fair bit, but I really don't know, if I'm honest, I don't know a lot about wine. And I always say to people, I know what I like and what I don't like.
Yeah.
But I was saying to you just before we had a little chat before we've started recording about how it's very mysterious, right? For a lot of people, there's a bit of mystery that goes on between, say, when those vines are planted and it seems effortless. Like I can just walk into a bottle shop or go to a winery and I can just buy this beautiful bottle of wine and come home and crack it open and have a drink. But there's so much, like it's an absolute science. I know that much. And I've been to wineries and I've sort of talked to people, but I don't know anything about it. And I think this is going to be so exciting for so many women listening to you to hear about the backstory of how that magic happens.
Yeah, it is magic, and it's easy for you to walk into the shop and get a beautiful bottle of wine, or go to the winery and sit outside on the sunny afternoon and enjoy it with a platter, an antipasto platter. Yeah, there is an awful lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and beers that go into winemaking. What's the saying? It takes a lot of beer to make a good wine, because at vintage time you're dealing with fermenting grape juice, and it's messy, it's dirty. Cold beer, obviously that's not everyone's cup of tea, but yeah, look, it's essentially it's primary industry. It's a grape growing, obviously, part of it, and it's all down to you're at the whim of Mother Nature. So that's why every year is different. And, obviously commercial ones try to keep wines to a sort of a very standard. So when the consumer goes in and they're spending their $10 or $15, they know that they're getting that bottle of wine. But when you're moving into sort of the higher price brackets and people understand wine a bit more, they understand the difference and the variation from year to year. And that can be because, for example, this year we've had a very cool, wet spring leading into summer. It's been quite cool. We haven't had many days over 30. Well, I'm in Geelong, so that's here, but it is quite around the place. So that's really, it comes down to what happens in the vineyard, and then, of course, it comes to the winery. And even when it's small batch right through to huge, big commercial winemaking, it's a process, and it is science, but it's also an art. So you have to understand the science to be able to do the art. There's winemakers who are completely focused on the numbers and the analysis and the science and so forth, and then there's people who are completely focused just on the art. I think a good blend of both is what makes the wine. But you can't just be a winemaker and not love and be excited and passionate about it. So, you could, work in a bank or be an accountant or something like that, not necessarily be passionate about numbers, but you can do the job or whatever it might be. But for this, a bit of you ends up in that bottle, a bit of your heart ends up in that bottle every time. So, if your heart's not in it, that does, and your love's not there, it does show in the bottle. So, it's crazy. It's that period of time in sort of where anywhere between February and April, May, or January, even in some places, where the grapes are becoming ripe, they're picking and processing, etc., and they're long, hard, arduous hours. And we always joke, I've placed someone this year who's brand new to the wine industry and she wanted to do a vintage. She'd been working in retail and she's from the UK. It's a friend of a friend's daughter. And I said to her, okay, so vintage is about crushing the grapes, cleaning, pressing the grapes, cleaning, plunging and fermenting the grapes, then cleaning, bit of lab work, and then some cleaning. And then when you've completely finished for the day, or you think you have, then there's cleaning. So it's a constant process. It's very physical. It's a lot of hard work. And we hate to love it, but we love to hate it.
Because it's like, I guess, any job, it's like you can do the things that you really love, but there's still always going to be cleaning or admin or whatever it may be, right? There's always that bit of the job that's the necessary evil, but it has to be done, right? Yeah. But you do that quite willingly because really it's the other stuff that you're so in love with, right?
And every year, every time anyone says, it's getting close to Christmas, I say, no, not because Christmas madness, because when Christmas is done, we're planning for vintage. It's like, no. And then vintage starts and you think, I haven't done this for 12 months and what happens here? But 26 vintages, and I still sometimes think, how's the press work again? You've got all this, and that's another thing. You've got this huge capital investment in equipment that's used for 6, maybe 8 weeks of the year.
Wow.
So it's a fascinating industry. And everyone's enamored of the tail end of it, the wine dinners and the lunches and the, enjoying that and the socializing and everything that goes with wine and the flavors and the food matching and all that sort of stuff. But, we've got to take it right back to where it starts in the vineyard. I'm not a vineyard owner, but I do work closely with all my growers. And it just never astounds me, the work and the passion that they put into it, because you can't make a great wine out of crap grapes.
Yes, I find that
you can make a crap wine out of great grapes. So.
Note to self. No.
Yeah.
I'm kind of fascinated by that as well. At sort of, I don't know, sort of towards the end of last year, my partner and I were down in Bendigo, and what I realised in that, we went around to a number of different wineries. We really wanted to kind of start. We've done this a couple of times where we go to different places and try and support wineries and buy from them directly rather than walking into, say, your Dan Murphy's. Not that there's anything wrong with that, because they do actually prop up the wine industry as well.
Yeah.
But it's kind of nice to be able to go to a winery and talk to the owners or talk to the grower or whoever it was. And, I guess one of the things that I'm learning a lot as well is that with wine, it's really dependent on the region as well.
Absolutely.
So when we were down sort of like, Bendigo and surrounding areas, they're like predominantly red growers, there's a lot of red down in that area. And I'm predominantly a white drinker, but my partner loves red. And it was just kind of really fascinating to see wineries vineyards who basically are producing a lot of red, and they only produce like these small batch whites because they're in a region where really red's queen, if you like.
Yeah, look, it's fascinating. We in Australia the New World wine, and especially we're in Australia, so we'll talk about that, is that we haven't had any of the restrictions of what you have in places like France and Italy, where if you want to make a Bordeaux, it has to be under there, or Champagne, for example. It's only these varieties, and you're only allowed to grow them under these conditions, and you're only allowed to press this many litres per tonne out to make the wines. Like the evolution of our, post-settlement of, Europeans in Australia, it's been, not quite the Wild West, but sometimes you think not far from it. But in the wine industry, we've been allowed to, plant whatever works. And so through trial and error over, we're talking 150 plus years of wine in Australia, well and truly, and, trial and error of what works well. And we've got the history of what happens in Europe to understand grape growing, but then to transport it here and what works with our climate and our soils and our even microclimates. So, for example, Geelong has 3 wine growing regions. So we've got the Moorabool Valley, the Bellarine Peninsula, and the Surf Coast. And they're all quite different in the wines that they produce. If you get a Shiraz from each of those, then it's quite different, and I mean also winemaking and winemakers are involved in that process as well. But yeah, it is fascinating to see that. And, people will say, you can't grow Cabernet in Geelong. I've had a couple of cracking Cabernets, and I actually get a little bit of fruit, and I love making Cabernet. I've made it all around the world, in China and India and the States. So I like, okay, well, let's get some from Geelong and see what we can do and have some fun with that sort of thing. Whereas, and we're known for Clare Valley loves is Riesling, or if we want Sauvignon Blanc, we go Adelaide Hills, or Pinot Noir, Geelong, Yarra Valley, Tasmania, Mornington Peninsula. But I think with the exploration and the growth of the industry, we're seeing a lot more alternate varieties now, or what we call, the public probably call alternate varieties. And we're seeing a lot more Mediterranean varieties come through, being more suited, I guess, especially to our inland areas in Australia. So it's a really fascinating evolution of the wine industry and what's, what would you know Barossa for? Shiraz. Yeah,
absolutely. So my partner's a big Shiraz drinker. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously that's all part of it. So the first step is growing it, but then the second step is winemakers, because everyone's got their take on how a wine is made. And then you've got sort of overarching that is sort of, consumer trends. Because if you think back, probably 80s into the 90s, big, oaky, buttery Chardonnays. And now we've gone back to more refined, elegant, sort of French styles of Chardonnay. And there's the occasional big one, and everyone's got their personal, likes and dislikes, etc. But again, that's sort of a bit flowing trends. And one thing you're seeing now is a little bit of a movement towards, with your red wines, bright, juicy, early release, just approachable. And yeah, sure, people are still making those big, release of 3 or 4 years after it's bottled, and it's big, bold, etc. But, consumer tastes are wanting something that's approachable, fresh, easy to drink now, and not like hard work, and you want to have a second or a third glass. I love working with some of the younger crew, and they say stuff like, "Oh, it's smashable," or "What does that mean?" "I'll smash it back." Okay.
But we are really lucky in Australia, and when I've been in Europe and spoken to people about this as well, and it's very true. We are so lucky here to have highly drinkable, quite affordable wine that's really good quality, and I think that's quite fascinating, because other countries, you're going to get the most excellent wine, but you're certainly paying for it. You know what I mean? Yeah,
I mean, there's village wines, as they call it in, Vendée in France, etc. And they're small producers, but you don't see that for the consumers in the city as much, I guess. But with, as industry and travel and all the rest of it has grown, that Australia had a good stronghold into the European or the UK and therefore the European and North American market. But with the growth of places like Argentina and Chile and South America, and cost of labour a lot cheaper there, so that they've got into these markets as well, and makes it difficult for Australia to compete. There's a whole really big picture, interesting sort of economic discussion to go in there, but I think there's probably more fun things to talk about today.
Well, it's kind of important as well, I think. I guess one of the big things that has happened to Australian winemakers is limitations of China, going into China in that market, which was a massive market. And I don't know that a lot of people really understand that, that was one of our biggest places to export to in the wine industry. And a lot of winemakers really took a hit.
Yeah, absolutely. That was, yeah. And I mean, what it has forced, though, is Australia to look at alternate markets, and it's strategically perhaps as an industry as a whole, and then obviously individuals have been doing this, but to a greater extent there was a reliance of that. There was a lot of eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
And so those markets that they're exploring now perhaps strategically should have been done as well as, but China, we had a great relationship back in the day, and I mean, I've lived and worked over there too, and they were wanting Australian winemakers over there to help train and teach them, but they've got a massively expanding domestic market as well.
Yeah.
So even when the gates open up again, can you hang on? Sorry, I've just got to,
of course,
put the dog out because it's coming.
That's okay. I don't know.
Sorry, Sandy.
No, that's okay. We get it. It's all good.
A bit special. So yeah, it's the whole China thing is interesting, and I mean it goes beyond obviously wine. What's going on in Australia's relationship, etc. And those changes don't happen overnight. But I think the world is a rapidly evolving and changing place. And,
it is.
You don't put all your eggs in one basket, which I mean obviously we didn't, but that was heavily weighted very much to China. So therefore the industry took a massive hit.
Yeah. I'm kind of fascinated by your journey through that as well, because you've worked, as you said, in many different places as a winemaker and in the wine industry. One was China. You've worked in India. I'm really fascinated by India, if I'm honest, and China, but you've also worked in the US as well. So how did all that come about, and how was it? Did you love it?
Yeah. So look, I think when you're starting out in your wine making journey or production journey, you become, I guess, a bit of what we call travelling winemakers, and there's a fantastic group on Facebook for not young, people of all age, but travelling winemakers. They've called it travelling winemakers living the dream. So it's a really great placement position for jobs overseas, etc. Because the labour-intensive period of vintage is when you get the opportunity to be employed, and until you're sort of trained and you can get permanent positions, etc. And of course, people don't realise this because they don't stop and think about it, but we're in opposite seasons. So our vintage here is coming up soon or happening now, depending on where you are. And then, of course, the opposite in Europe or in the Northern Hemisphere, it's sort of anywhere from late July, August, September, October, November. And so you can do vintages in alternate hemispheres. The most I did was 3 vintages in 1 year, which was just nuts. It's a really insane, intense period of time. You are, when you get into your more senior roles, you are making choices and decisions about picking grapes, frantically watching the weather, working out what space you've got in the winery, all the logistics of it all, for something that's not going to see the market for, anywhere, early release whites, maybe 6 or 8 months, bigger reds, 18 months. And so you only get that period of time to do it. You don't get brewing, you brew a batch that's buggered, brew another one. You've got access to those ingredients. We get grapes once a year. So we did that on alternate. And so very early on, I was doing vintage in Australia, vintage overseas. So I did the west coast of the US in Northern California in Sonoma County, place called Mendocino County, and then I did another one in Long Island in New York, which was great. Seriously, just being down the road from New York. That was a good fun experience. And then as my career progressed, I sort of got permanent positions, and you don't tend to go overseas to do that because it takes you away for too long a period. But then I was in a job, and I'd been production winemaking, so that's sort of more QA in the bottling process and so forth at a big commercial winery, and then a more small boutique one. But I wasn't making wine anymore, and I sort of looked around and I saw this job advertisement for a vintage sort of consulting role in China. And I thought, this sounds pretty cool. And I rang the guy and had a chat about it. He said, but you've got a job. I said, yeah, but I'm not making wine anymore, and I'm not happy, and I love travel, and I'm great with people from different cultures, and I'm very open and understanding and blah, blah, blah. And they said, all right, well, if you're really sure, I'll put you up for it. And I'm like, yeah. Anyway, I got the job. So I resigned from my job, got on a plane, and then probably burst into tears going, oh, my goodness, what am I doing? I'm jumping on a plane. I'm only going for a job that's for 4 months. It's in China, remote China, which had just had earthquakes in Yunnan province.
Wow.
Anyway, I thought, it's nothing I don't know. It's just going to be a challenging environment. Anyway, got in there and just had the most amazing experience. We were working at elevations of, the winery was 1,800 metres, so...
Wow.
I don't know if everyone knows Kosciuszko is about 2,000 metres.
Yeah,
we don't. I think. So the wineries at that. Some of the vineyards were 2,800 metres. We had mountains overlooking us that were at 6,000 metres. So it was right at the tail end of the Himalayas as they come down sort of through Tibet into that part of China. So that was fascinating. And then from there, with that same company, I got the opportunity to go to China. So I came home, was home 5 or 6 days, I think, and then on a plane to India. And I went and worked in India for 2.5 years in Karnataka. So I don't know if anyone any of your listeners might know, but Hampi is a World Heritage Site. And I was probably about 80 or 100 kilometres from Hampi.
Wow. I was kind of really intrigued by that because, I felt really ignorant that I didn't actually realise there was a huge wine growing culture in India. I had absolutely no idea.
Yeah, where I was, I knew it a little bit because obviously I'm in the industry and I'm interested, and I'd gone through wine studies or wine when I did my postgraduate, and there was two or three Indian guys that we went through with, and sort of I found out about the Nasik region, which is a very large region, and then they've popped up everywhere else. So there's, not everywhere, a lot of other places. There's quite a few up on the northern India, on the edge of Nepal, down near Bangalore, and then there's a few others just spotted around that people have been opportunistic to do, where there might have been table grapes growing, and then someone's gotten involved. And I had the opportunity to work with someone who'd been passionate about it and found this vineyard and resurrected it and was putting money and love and effort into it. And it was fascinating. People go, I wouldn't have thought there's much market. And I said, look, even if the percentage is really small, they've, I believe now, have surpassed China in population, India. So even at a very small percentage, that's a lot of people.
Yeah, wow. It's kind of incredible, actually, isn't it, when you think about it?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just plugging my computer.
No, that's okay.
It's telling me it's popped out power. Sorry.
That's all right.
There we go. Yep.
Perfect.
So yeah, India was fascinating. I got to tell a short story. Is that on the way over, I rarely get them, but when I do get them, they're horrible. I get migraines. Mm. And on the plane on the way over, I got one, and I was flying via Kuala Lumpur. And by the time I got to Kuala Lumpur, I didn't have any of my medications on me. I was horribly sick because I vomit, etc. And I'm lying in this airport thinking, what am I doing? I'm going to India. I'm dying, a migraine. So it took everything of my energy to get on the plane to do the next leg. And I got there and had that complete washed out migraine hangover. And the first thing I said was, listen, please, how you meet me now is not me. I am. And they said, oh, you're okay? I said, yeah, I had a background on the way over. They said, "Oh, we're a pharmaceutical company. Do you need anything?" And they just went, opened the cupboard doors.
Oh my God, how good is that? As
By
luck.
that stage, I didn't need anything, obviously.
No, but as luck would have it, good grief. Because there's nothing worse. I mean, flying with a headache is bad enough. I can't imagine flying with a migraine, you poor thing.
Oh, I can think of one thing worse, and that happened to me. I never got sick. I ate anywhere and everywhere, and I never got sick in India till about an hour into a 12-hour flight back from Delhi to Melbourne, and I got the worst Delhi belly.
Oh no!
And I don't get stomach sick. I don't tend to get those sorts of things. And I used to see tourists all around me when we were in India, and I thought, "Are you poor people?" And here's me eating street food and not worrying about anything. And then I got this one flight. Oh, that was worse than the migraine.
Yeah, wow. And India's kind of it's such a fascinating place. I've been to Mumbai. That's the only place I've been in India.
I've been to Mumbai, I've been to other places.
Extraordinary. But it's just loud and the smells and the sounds and the noise. I loved it. I find that kind of stuff really exhilarating.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I say about India, you can see, if you're pretty much any adjective you can think of is happening all the time in India. It's bright, it's colourful, it's dirty, it's smelly, it's funny, it's sad, it's happy, it really is. You have to let go.
Yeah.
When you get there, because I was 3 days in thinking, and I'd gone from China, which was very organised and regimented and quite controlled in what I could and couldn't do, etc. And I'd actually been under local police watch because I was on the edge of Tibet. They don't want you going into
of course.
Tibetan autonomous region, which we call Tibet and they call part of China. And I understood that, but I said, "No, I'm here to make wine." It's just and then I go to India and it's just this sort of ad hoc craziness. And after it was about 2.5 days when I thought, I just went and did a little bit of quiet time, and I do a bit of, not full meditation, but just, sitting with things. And I thought, if I don't let go, and I went and I took a big breath and I just breathed and I sort of went, I'm just going to go with the flow. And it was the best feeling because as soon as I did that, I loved it.
Yeah.
It absolutely was really quite a life, not really quite a life, it was a life-changing experience. And I got to go in and out, and so I'm still very close with a couple of the people that work at the winery, the locals. I still stay in touch with the owners and the old business head. She now lives in Australia. It was a very special part of life, and I would go back in a heartbeat. The reason I didn't at the time was an opportunity came back up in my hometown, and they're rare as hen's teeth. And as much as I was enjoying that, I was away for 6-7 months of the year. And, it's as wonderful and life-affirming and adventurous as that all is. There was a home element that was missing for me, and I felt I was getting a bit disconnected from family and friends, and, it makes it difficult to try and create ongoing relationships and, that sort of thing. So.
Yeah, absolutely. But still, what an extraordinary experience for you to have, and then to bring some of that knowledge, I guess, back with you, because I imagine everywhere you've worked in the world, you've learnt new things and gained more experience, and then brought it back to your love of winemaking and to the things that you love to do and that you're passionate about.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I mean, we talked winemaking being about science and so forth, and I'm very much, I know that, and I studied it and etc. And but I'm by no means a boffin, and I'm very much an operational winemaker. So for me, I work closely with people that are very science based, and I love that. But I love bringing these ideas back. And hey, when I was here, we tried this, and it sort of worked really well. And then they'll tell me how the science works, and I've got the general understanding. Because you can't make one and not. But yeah, that was fascinating, and not so much. Sometimes not just what you learn; it's sort of what you taught yourself because of the circumstances you had to. Like they say, necessity is the mother of invention. Like I have become really adept at looking at a situation, a bit MacGyvering. Become a bit of a MacGyver winemaker when you work in these remote locations.
I love it.
You work out how to get your obviously not your stapler and sticky tape. You get the equipment you've got at hand to make things work to get the result that you want. And I know that I've turned up at places here and go, oh, we could do this. They're like, you're mad. Why don't we just use the pump? I'm like, oh, well, I didn't have one of those over there, so.
That's I love that. I love like that kind of that adventurous spirit and what that brings to for women who are in business, I think, especially, but really for women in all aspects of life. When you talk to women who have that kind of adventurous spirit, they kind of bring that stuff back into all aspects of their life, and I just kind of love that.
Yeah, it's really funny. Every now and then, when I'm sort of feeling a bit overwhelmed or am I doing the right thing, or I stop and I actually go back and look at some of my photos of my time there and think, you were pretty brave. Like, I went into an earthquake zone, and there were what do they call it, the tremors, the afterquakes and stuff like that, and I didn't think anything of it until right when I was leaving, and they gave a speech and it was being translated for me in China, and they were saying, and we thank Kelly for coming. She's worked very hard and she's very brave. Come here. And I sort of went, oh. And I had this sort of post-anxiety, like post my period of being there, anxiety of, oh, my goodness, I did all this. And it's like, oh, hang on, you're okay. It's okay.
Yeah. It's pretty bloody brave, though, Kelly. Like,
yeah, I didn't think it at the time. And there's part of me that sort of acknowledges that when people say it. But it's sort of part of me, and it's really funny. I can make massive decisions like that to upturn my life and go and work in a remote part of the world and all the rest of it, but then have a complete meltdown at the amount of pasta in the shelf at the supermarket.
I get you. Yeah, but I did think that that's the resilience of women as well, that we can go through a crisis. We can go through, women tend to just go, right, in a crisis, we've got a deal. A lot of women, not all women, but a lot of women, and then you tend to find they fall apart after the fact. And I know that, I've been through things in my life where that's exactly what happens. Yeah. I think it's an inbuilt kind of thing in women. I don't really know where it comes from, but I see a lot of resilience in women when they go through these extraordinary crisis events, if you like.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I do tend to throw myself in. I will admit, I do thrive on, I won't say chaos, but I do thrive on challenge. It's the day-to-day that I struggle with at times, although I'm much better at it. And I'm almost at a position where I can hand off some of that. I've got to get a few more systems in place for my business and so forth. But as soon as that's done, then I can hand off some of that so it's done the way that it needs to be done for me and my, I guess my ethos of my business. And that will free me up to do some of the more interesting, big picture sort of things. So, yeah.
I love that.
That's that, and working with people around you and those teams and stuff like that, which is, I hadn't really set out to start a business on my own. And then I'd always wanted to do this. And I thought, well, actually that works quite well. And I've set up things around my business. So my little warehouse is a place where I go and, the admin manager and the owner are often there, so it feels like a workplace. I can go in there and have a chat and work from there and feel like there's people there. So, and when I really need just to knuckle down and do some, strategic stuff, I can sit at my desk at home and do that. I'm often out at the wineries or talking to people or at the vineyards. So, it's a bit of a balance of everything. And then, of course, I'm sales. I'm out on the road talking to people and sharing the story and so forth, which I've been doing a bit. I've really got out there and done that in the last sort of 2 months, and the feedback I've been getting is great. And I've sold out one of my wines already, and a couple are getting low. I'm about to bottle some more of a different variety so that I can go out again with a different story and teeing up this vintage 2023 and some of the collaboration projects I'm working on as well. It's all very exciting.
It is very exciting, and congratulations. It's like selling out is a huge thing, like selling out of one bottle, one kind of varietal. Yeah. I think it's really fascinating because I know when we've chatted in the past, you were saying that your wine is available in some boutique places, which is amazing, but heading sort of into the future, eventually this is going to be available more widely, so people will be able to eventually buy from you directly online, etc. And I think that's a really exciting kind of thing for you coming up. Like that must be amazing.
Yeah, it is. The only reason a website's not up is because I've been procrastinating, because every time I write something and then I judge myself, and it's like, just get the website up. You can tweak and get it all happening, etc. So direct sales. I do direct sales now. If anyone contacts me through, social media or through my, whatever it might be, I can do direct sales. And obviously we've got 3 routes to market really as producers, as direct to consumer, or we can sell wholesale to a store, or I can give it to a distributor who sells to wholesale to a store. And each step you take, then less money for you, but also less work, and they're professionals at what they do. So finding your business the right mix of what's direct, what's through wholesale, or what's through a distributor. So I'm sort of working all that out. I'm pretty much doing everything on my own at the moment. Because it's nicer cash flow for me, and I also I don't want the brand story to be diluted through a distributor or to get lost in a portfolio at this point. Not lost, but put amongst a portfolio of other wines and not being the number one priority. So I'm out there telling that story. I've worked in sales before, and I come from a marketing, PR, brand management background, so I know how that stuff works. And when you're doing it for yourself, so much so much easier, because you go in, it's like, hey, this is my story and I know it inside out, and anyone can ask me anything, And
I love
that feedback's been terrific. So website, hopefully within sort of 6-8 weeks at the moment. And I'm actually putting, I know that I need to be strategic about social media. And it posts have been, but there hasn't been an overall strategy. So I'm sort of working on that at the moment, because I've got some really terrific, I think, honestly, maybe innovative ideas that can help, funnel into the website and that story. But at the moment in Geelong and Melbourne, focusing on independent retail and sort of wine bars, maybe a few restaurants, etc., and being very key about it, because I don't have massive supply. And when you go into restaurants, etc., you have to have that ongoing supply. It's in retail, it's okay to create that demand, and then you have to wait for next vintage, and it's okay, but when you want that ongoing thing with people write a wine list and you want that going. In Sydney or in New South Wales and Queensland at the moment, really only sort of upmarket or independent type retail outlets, because I'm distributing from Geelong. Within a few months, though, that I'll have some storage space in those places, and so then hopefully you can get into some more wine bars and that sort of thing. So that's what I'm working on, and volumes aren't great. Like I might say to you, I've got 2 pallets of wine, and it's 120 odd dozen, 128 dozen boxes. Yeah, that's a lot of wine. It's like, well, it is, but if you've got it in your backyard, you're going to want to drink it in a year.
I would say, Jen, we should probably talk about that as well. So under Lady Garden Wines, under your brand,
yep.
So what sort of wines are you putting out into the universe?
Cool. So at the moment, I've got a fizz, which is sort of in a pet nat style. It's cloudy, but it's made from the 3 champagne varieties, Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Pinot Meunier.
We love a bubbly. That's exciting.
Yeah, so that's that fizz, yeah. I've got a rosé made from Pinot Meunier, which is a little bit different because most rosés are Shiraz or Pinot or Grenache. I've got a 21 field blend white, which is predominantly Marsanne. It was pressed with a bit of Chardonnay because there was such a small amount of it, and during fermentation it had a little bit of Sauvignon Blanc put in it just to give it a little aromatic lift. And now I've got the Marsanne for 2022, so same vineyard, but I got more, and we made that as a really bright, sort of fresh, summery wine, and that's really delicious. And then I've got, I had a Pinot, but I've sold out of that. I've got an early release Cabernet from the Yarra Valley, so gone a little bit different on this, really tried to go for the pretty aromatics. It's still got plenty of structure and tannin to it, but it's a really approachable wine, and it's like it was 2022 and it was bottled in November. Normally you wouldn't be bottling your Cabernets till middle of this year sort of thing. So that, again, that was an interesting wine. I've got Erin Pooley from Little Francis Wines made for me an Arnace, which is an Italian grape variety.
Ooh.
And she got that she's based in Beechworth, and she got that from Alpine Valleys. And then Anita Good in South Australia made a Montepulciano. We got right to the end of the vintage. She worked at the winery down the road where I was consulting at last year. And we did a lot of work together because some of her wines were made at the winery I was working at. And when there was no more grapes, we're like sitting back thinking, this is great. And she got a phone call and she's looking at me and she goes, hang on a sec. She put her hand over the phone. She said, hey, there's some really good Monty up in Langhorne Creek. And I'm like, no more grapes, no more grapes. She goes, but it's a really good price and it's really good. And this producer gets it and this producer. I'm like, ooh, okay. So we got some more grapes. And I also made a Chardonnay while I was over in South Australia. So they're yet to be bottled. Coming forward this year, a rosé. I've got a rosé coming. I'm doing Sangiovese and maybe a bit of Tempranillo up from the Alpine Valleys.
Wow.
Still working on the South Australia option. In Western Australia, we're doing a Chenin Blanc. Yeah.
Very nice.
So that's under the Lady Garden label, as you see the Lady Garden label. But I'm also then doing some collaboration brands as well. So Lady Garden Cross, whoever it might be, I'm working with. And I'm also working on, hasn't quite come to fruition for this vintage, but I've got 4 other Kellys in my wine life, and we're going to have the Kelly Wine Project.
I love that.
I know. We're going to
5 Kellys all up, or 4 of you all?
1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of us with the first name, 1 with the last name, Kelly.
I love that. Kelly wine. Oh, that's
we don't
brilliant.
quite know how that will. That's a work in progress. At the very least, Kellys will get together and drink good wine and talk about it. At the best, we might come up with some wine every year and do something with that. So, yeah, I'm building a portfolio that will be beyond just those 6 or so Lady Garden wines.
Beautiful.
It's all under the guise of I've registered partners in wine. So
Yay.
Yeah.
I love this. It's so freaking exciting. I mean, I don't even know what half of those varietals are, but it didn't really matter because I knew what a lot of them were, but not all of them. But that's okay. I love that you've got such a broad kind of range that, you know, as a winemaker, that's really incredible, especially for a smaller winemaker. Yeah. But that's absolutely incredible. Hey, I wanted to talk to you about being a woman, and there are some phenomenal female winemakers, and
Absolutely.
I understand that, yourself included, but I wanted to talk about what it's like entering into this arena, because to this day it is still really largely male-dominated, right?
Yeah, I have some statistics, and these won't be entirely accurate, but I'll talk generally, that I looked at a while ago when I was doing a bit of some research. And at university, these days it's almost 50-50 male, female at university. And then you go into actually wine. I don't know about viticulture. I suspect it would be less, but into wine making. So, you know, assistant winemaker upwards. I think it was something like around 30%. I'm not 100% accurate on this, but it was well less than 10% women were in senior roles in the wine industry. So I have to admit, I didn't even sort of think about it when I went to do it. I just sort of do things. But I will acknowledge that I have had challenges during that time, absolutely. And I still occasionally get mansplained to about winemaking until I say, you know, that I've done 26 vintages, and that's actually, and I've been in this industry for 26 years, and I've been making wine for 19. How long have you been doing it? And in most cases, it's not malicious, or it's just not thinking, and they might be just an older generation, etc. But across the board, I've had an overwhelmingly good experience. I'm not going to go into it, but I would have had a couple of unpleasant, very sexist, almost being placed in positions of feeling very uncomfortable from that point of view. But generally speaking, I just go ahead and I'm just me. And I don't tend to, I'm a very I do smooth over things, but when it gets too far, I won't cop shit. So I'll call it out. And as I've gotten older and more confident in me and who I am and what I'm doing, I'm in my 50s now, and it's like, come at me, bro. But I won't, and I definitely won't stand for it. I actually get really, really upset when I see it to other people, and I get more upset than me because it's like, whatever, water, it's never water off a duck's back. But yeah, when I see it with someone else, that's when I get upset and I'll jump in, and that's when they go.
So I think that as women get older, and this is the whole thing, right? Like, I'm in my 50s as well. My entire platform is for women who are over the age of 40, 50, 60, whatever, right? So, but the more women I speak to in this sort of age demographic, especially 50 sort of beyond, is exactly right, that we become so intolerant of the bullshit that we witness that happens to other women. And whether that's in the media, whether it's in real life, whether it's in the workplace. And I know myself, I am really intolerant of seeing that happen to other women, and especially younger women, because I think you have to be kidding me. You know, my mother was bloody burning her bra in the 70s. Why are we still fighting for this shit, you know?
Yeah, and you get to a place, and I mean, you know, I'm what my platform with my business is very positive. It's a celebration of, it's not to the exclusion of, it's bringing people along and so forth. And I am very aware to make it a positive experience, but I must admit there's times when all those heckles go up and hackles go up, and I'm like,
I do love though that you know, the basis of your business and the platform, you know, obviously passionate about making wine, but passionate, as we talked about before, about bringing other women on that journey of embracing other female winemakers. And there's this whole kind of narrative, which on my platform, you know, we continually try and break down, which is this supposed competitiveness of women and how women, you know, we're fighting for our seat at the table. But my experience sort of in my platform, in my business, and all the women that I meet has been the opposite, that I meet so many incredibly generous women who want to help other women on the journey, who want to make their transition into that whatever industry easier, and you know, who want to help showcase them and want to help them rise. And I think that's what I was so enamored by with your business and by you. I love that.
Thank you. It's look, by my nature, I am a very generous and giving person, and look, you know, it comes back to bite you on the butt sometimes. But I'd rather do that for the wins that it gives other people, and you know that it gives me, I guess, in my own senses. But I guess also though, as I've gotten older, I realise that there is only so much you can give. And you've got to look after you, because I used to give too much and I'd be a detriment. So I'm finding a really good balance now, and I'm very aware. I'm learning to say no, but I still say yes a lot. But it's too important to me. Like, for example, the other day, someone who I'm really keen to get on board with, Lady Garden. She worked as a cellar hand in the winery that I was working at a while ago, and she's gutted because the fruit that she had lined up for this year hasn't come through because there's not been enough of it, so people have pulled back and she couldn't find anything. So I found her some fruit from a pretty good vineyard. It's from interstate, and she's I said, we'll do Lady Garden. She goes, it's a bit over. I said, no, it's fine, we'll do something next year. And you know, a few phone calls is all it takes to really help someone out occasionally, you know. That's what it's about. I'm not about like, oh no, that fruit, I might get that for me, and that's okay. Well, you know, maybe next year I can get some of that, or I can do something else. Or it's, you know, I've been burned a few times by a few cowboys out there in the industry. You get gazumped for getting fruit, or someone comes in and snakes a contract from you, and it's like, okay, well, I'll just move on and do the next thing. You know, you fight for what you know is worth fighting for, and just let the other stuff go because it doesn't matter.
I love
all those
that.
other opportunities around the corner.
Right.
But yeah,
exactly.
that's it. It's all. It's about. I'm essentially trying to create, you know, a working life where I can have a comfortable retirement. I'm not greedy, and I spend the rest of my, you know, let's say 15 years of working, working with really cool people, traveling around the world, eating and drinking, eating good food and drinking great wine. Easy.
It sounds like the perfect life to me. That's for bloody sure. Take me with you.
That's the whole plan. I seriously want to. I've got friends in Champagne that want to do something with Lady Gaga, Le Jardin de Femme. I'm connecting through some sub-regions in Italy. I've got friends in the States that are keen, but at the moment, I'm only growing organically through what I can. So the next step to be able to do that might be, looking at some investors, or I don't know if I'll do crowdfunding. I think more investing type scenario. No. And so maybe someone who listens to your podcast could point me in the right direction of some opportunities for that sort of thing, for raising some funds to be able to take it to the next level. Because, literally I'm only doing 2 pallets of wine of each thing at the moment, and it's good for turnover. It continues that, and it will start paying me, a livable wage, this year onwards. But to grow the brand and make that, I need to be doing a lot more than that.
Yeah, it's very exciting though, and I just see, I can foresee that you're going to go from strength to strength, because the passion and the story behind your brand is what makes it so unique and so brilliant. And I know that lots of women are going to get behind your brand and say, I like that. I like that she's creating opportunities for other women. I like that she wants to bring younger women through. I think all of that stuff is just so vitally important. So, I'm just going to say to all the ladies out there to get behind your brand. We'll put up links and everything, by the way.
I have a hashtag. Share the lady love. Hashtag share the Lady Garden love.
Love, see? Hashtag share the lady. Yes, we should all share the Lady Garden love.
Garden love, that's right.
I love that. I have a friend, Susan Jarvis, and she heads up a business called The Spicy Boudoir. And I was telling her all about you and saying you're coming on. And when I told her the name of the brand, she laughed. She said, I love it so much, Lady Garden.
I can see a collaboration going up there.
Thank you very much. So can I. So, I'm all about putting the ladies together. So that's why I was talking about you. I hope your ears weren't burning.
They seem to be. I don't know.
But she's fantastic. Susan's just, I think she's got a piece on SBS coming out on the 7th of March. And she talks about sexuality in midlife, and it's awesome. And I do think that there'd be a great collab there going on with Lady Garden Wines. Amazing.
And I was just going to say, you talk about 7th of March, 8th of March being International Women's Day, and I am doing a few events around the place, etc. And I just love the serendipity of it, is that my birthday is 8th of March. So it ties in with the,
I love that. Fancy having a birthday on International Women's Day. Yeah, I love it. And I think that, weave that into part of your story. I think it's so amazing. It just kind of makes sense. It's a very serendipitous day.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, indeed.
I've been so excited to chat with you today. I think you are brilliant. I am going to share all the links I can on all of our social media and in our show notes. Thank you, Kelly, so much for joining me in the confessional today. I've had an absolute ball. I now want to run out and do a wine appreciation course so that next time I talk to you, I have some clue about what I'm talking about.
But thanks so much for having me. It's an absolute blast to just have a chat and talk wine and talk life. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks, Sandy.
Wine and life is great. Also, before we go, one quick question for any women out there who are listening and they're over the age of 40 and they think, oh, maybe it's too late, but I really would love to work in wine. What's your advice to them?
Just do it. I was not over 40, but I was 32 when I did my first vintage. So I packed up my life, jumped in a car to South Australia and just got in there. And all I did for that whole vintage was pump over tanks. It's a whole technical wine thing, but basically sucking wine out of the bottom of the tank and pumping it over the skins at the top of the tank and then emptying those tanks and then cleaning them. That's all I did for maybe 10 weeks, 8 weeks. So, get in there and do it. Talk to people. There's wine courses, etc. That's one thing that I'm looking at potentially doing is a fun, not imposing way, because wine can be quite daunting. There is a lot to learn, etc. But I'd like to put together something maybe with you that we could do for ladies and put together like a fun book club, but for wine, So there's book club and then there's probable club. We can have wine
club.
Yeah.
I really
learn a bit about wine, but then you sit and drink and coffee.
I would love to honestly jump on board with you and do that. I think it's a fantastic idea. I think there's a lot of women in the same boat as me. We love wine. We don't really understand it necessarily, but I think that that's such an incredible thing to do, and to make it fun and for it to be led by a woman like yourself, I think is extraordinary. So we'll be talking more about that, I think
we will.
I love it. Thank you so much for coming into the confessional today and sharing all of your wisdom about the wine industry and about what you do. And I love everything that you're doing, and I just know you're going to go from strength to strength. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Great to chat.
It was a joy. Thanks for listening to the Good Girl Confessional podcast. The Good Girl Confessional podcast is brought to you by WB40, Women Beyond 40 magazine. Available now at WB40.com. The Good Girl Confessional podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen to quality podcasts. We're also now available on YouTube. We chat with really interesting women about their hard-won wisdom, but it really helps us if you can subscribe, like, and share the podcast. Thanks so much for your support. Bye for now.